Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. This is Ask the Expert with Julia Fox Garrison. I'll be your host for this 1 hour long session. I'm Jen. I'm part of the team at the National Aphasia Association, a nonprofit organization dedicated to advocating for people with aphasia and their families. You can find more information about us and about aphasia at aphasia.org. If you're joining us on YouTube, we love having you. Thank you for coming. We'd really appreciate if you would like, comment, and subscribe. Today, we will be talking with best-selling author and inspirational speaker, Julia Fox Garrison. She surely made you laugh, cry, feel angry, grateful, inspired every time you turned a page in her brilliant book, Don't Leave Me This Way, or When I Get Back on My Feet, You'll Be Sorry. Julia, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to everybody.
I absolutely love your book. It's so funny and honest. Thank you for making me laugh and cry so much. So Julia is going to talk to us about her book and experiences. If anyone in our audience has questions, please enter them into the Q&A chat. We will have time for your questions after we hear a bit from Julia. So I'm going to hand it over to Julia now.
I did it my way. And I hope I can convey that to you, that we should always do it our way if it's how our vision is directing us. And I wanted to write it because it was for cathartic reasons. It was for two reasons. It was one, to show the healthy care professionals that there's a human being inside every patient and we're all unique. We all have, if we all had a stroke and it's the same stroke, same area, we all recover differently. So I wanted to show that we're unique and that we need compassion and empathy in our treatment, not just the medical form. The other side of the coin was I wanted to share with people who are facing something hard, and it doesn't have to be just stroke. It can be any adversity. I wanted to share that we have there's no parameters to the power of the human spirit. I was told I was going to die over and over again. My prognosis was 2% to live, and if I lived, I would never get out of a wheelchair. And personally, I said some profanities to that. I am out of a wheelchair. I do wear a brace, and I can show that to you at the end when we do Q&A if you want to see that. I want to share with you my deficits. If you draw a line down the center of my body, my whole left side is numb with neuropathy. I have hemiparesis, which means it's completely weak, so it doesn't really work very well. My hand doesn't really function. I can move my hand and things, but it doesn't really work. It holds on to things with vice-like grip, and I have to mentally say release, or sometimes I just let go because I forget I'm holding on to something. So it's really funny. It can be funny. And one thing you'll learn about me is that I find humor even in the dark things. I also, because I'm talking with you with the aphasia group, I did not have specifically aphasia, but what I worked with a speech therapist. I had to learn. There was a couple problems going on because of my face being, and it still is, my whole face to the left is completely numb. So is my tongue and my cheek. And to form words, I couldn't really form words. And I also had some cognitive issues that was difficult to overcome as well. And to this very day, I still have some cognitive filtering noise. If I'm in a restaurant, I can only be in an area where it's very quiet. Otherwise, I feel like I'm in surround sound and I can't participate in conversations. So there's a bunch of different things as far as speech therapy that I did have to go through.
So our first question is, what are you up to now?
Oh, God. So Barnes & Noble flew me to New York and took me out to lunch way back when I published, and they asked me to write another book. Well, I've been they wanted me to write about growing up with 8 brothers and no sisters. So I had been writing it, and I stopped writing in 2018. I don't know why, except that we had I lost one brother and then I lost another, and those were the two brothers I grew up with, and it kind of halted my writing process. So I have about 200 pages written, but it's probably about 100 once you edit. So there's that project that is eating at me. At some point, it will get done. I promise you. The second project is my speaking. I was all over the country at one point, and it was all word of mouth. I do an event and I get 5 more, and I loved it. I love interacting with people. Then COVID hit and all those canceled. And so we had to pivot to virtual. So I do a lot of virtual now, as well as I just started doing in-person speaking, but I've written a lot of material for my speaking. So I probably have about 150 slides, and I just pick and choose, and I write new material all the time. And then life gets in the way too of just, all your appointments. I still have tons. I still have a lot of doctor's appointments. It just never ends on that stuff. But, that's part of the upkeep. And other than that, I'm happy every day. I'm grateful every morning I wake up. And like I said, it's a do-over.
When you first came home from the hospital, how was that adjustment? What was the adjustment like for you and your family? Can you talk a bit more about how your family had to adjust to this new situation?
I can almost go right back there because I remember the feeling when I came in the house in a wheelchair and they had to build a ramp, and they therapists wanted me to have my bedroom in what was our office on the first floor. And I was really adamant that I wanted to be upstairs as a normal person. My poor husband had to drag me, firemen carrying me, dragging me up the stairs. But it was so I wouldn't handicap not just my mind, but my family too. But when I first came home, the first feeling I had was how broken I was and how I had been gone for so long. And, my poor son hadn't, he didn't recognize me as his mother really, because I looked different and I was different. So it was very, very difficult. Unfortunately, I discharged myself, which I shouldn't have done, because I decided 3 months was enough, a little more than 3 months. And I had the doctors believing the therapists were discharging me and the therapists believing the doctor discharged me. Not a good thing, because when I got home, I realized how hard it was on my husband, and I had needed 24/7 care. So he needed to work. We had a 3-year-old toddler who wasn't in preschool yet. And so I needed my family all stepped up and had to come every day. There was a calendar to be at my house. And it was very, very frustrating for me, who was such an independent and someone who often is a leader. I was a manager in my corporate world, so it was hard for me to accept where I was at, but I had to because I didn't have a choice. So it was very, very difficult. And the only thing I can share is that, go back to being positive and finding good things every day, even if it's little. The sun is shining today. If that's all it is, then take that. So find the little things that can give some happiness and keep you on a positive track.
Someone in our audience says, I'm a care partner and I want to inspire my family member to find hope and resilience. Do you have advice for me as a family member of someone who has had a stroke so that I can motivate my family member?
Well, I touched a little bit on hope and resilience, and because if those are the two main things that I think are so important, and not just recovery, but in everybody's life. If you think about it, I mean, so if you set by example your hopefulness, it may, rub off on the person that you're caring for. Have an upbeat attitude, and it may, rub off and project onto that person. but they're internalizing what their pain probably too. You could promote them, to share what they're feeling, and really empathize with them. And when you empathize with them, you're feeling their pain, and you're feeling. So one of the I have so many slides. I have a slide about active listening, and what active listening is not giving advice or responding to what was said, but to paraphrase what the person said to you. So when you do that, that person will feel like you're validating their feelings. You're validating them by just repeating what they said. And doing that is making an authentic connection. So don't ever lose hope, because hope is always there. We should never lose hope, because hope is always evolving. And it's, like I said earlier, it could be that the hope you woke up with is going to be different than the hope you go to bed with, just by the experience of the framework of that day.
Thank you so much for sharing. In the book, you seem to have such a strong opinion about some of the doctors and the nurses that you've worked with. I say some because you do go into some lovely doctors and nurses and talk very nicely about them too. But you give nicknames like Dr. Jerk, Nurse Doom. I think one nurse was dubbed the Raisin Nurse. So of course, all I can picture is like a California raisin taking your temperature. What advice would you give to future clinicians, nurses, and doctors?
So what I did is I named what they projected to me. So I had a Dr. Panic, and he was a rheumatologist at my rehab, who had, from my critical care hospital, the Dr. Jerk had said I was going to die if I didn't follow his treatment course of chemotherapy for life. So the chemotherapy for life, I did, it made me very ill, on top of the dealing with stroke. So I was paralyzed, and then I'm dealing with a chemotherapy, and I had to do that once a month, 10-hour intravenous. And I did 5 treatments of it, 5 months. And I realized my intuition was telling me that I don't think this is the right course of treatment. And thank God I listened to my intuition. And this is what I tell care providers, that listen to your patient, really listen to them. That, if you ask me one word, I usually end it on medical conferences with the word listen. Listening, active listening, because when you're truly listening, you're getting the answer. A lot of times you get the answer. And so trust the patient's instincts and intuition, because we've been in our bodies 24/7. And to me, that's on the job training. So those are important components into care.
Thank you. So you've been quoted saying that feisty means you're a fighter. You said it tonight as well. I love that. In your book, it sounded like there were so many people trying to push your personality away or give you a hard time about being feisty. Did that ever make you want to give up?
Actually, Jen, it made me madder. You know, I grew up with, as I mentioned, 8 brothers and no sisters, and you can't be a shrinking violet in that kind of dynamic. No, it never made me ever want to give up. There were times, and don't get me wrong, there were times I was sad. There were times I was crying on my own in private, but I put on a best face forward, because I found that my loved ones were coming in and they were very sad, and I was comforting them. And that was not helping me heal. And that's when I changed the whole edict to bring in jokes, because I needed to change the dichotomy of the room, even though it was a thinly layered the facade that was fun. So no, when I got the negativity, it just made me more resolute. I'll show you. I'll show you. You say this, I'll show you.
So a member of our audience has asked, should a caregiver sugarcoat everything to motivate someone she or he is taking care of?
No, no. I think that by sugarcoating, you're not respecting the person because it's not reality. I mean, you have to measure the person you're talking to and their personality and how they receive information. So for me, I personally, the more direct you are, the better off I am. I don't want anything sugar-coated. I want hard answers. And a lot of times there are no hard answers. And I think what your questioner person is asking me is how do you respond or answer questions? So sometimes there isn't an answer. So the answer really goes back to the hope and to the things that we can control, that is in the air, our attitude, our resilience, and our integrity. Because there are some things that are no answers of, like, you know what I mean? So we need to make sure, but for me, that's what I like, is directness. But you may find someone who may find that insulting or too hard for them. So it's more about measuring the language you use for the person you're speaking to. I hope I answered it correctly, or not correctly, but answered the question. And if you want to write me and ask me or whatever, we can talk.
That is such a strong message, measuring the language that you choose. This person has also said, thank you, great advice. So after your
Can I step back on just one more thing about that? So the language and the word, I have a slide about words, and it's about words and the energy it creates. Words create energy. So we could create hope with words, or we can create despair with words. So really, really analyze the language that we use when we're communicating. So, you know, the sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me, is the most untrue thing you'll ever hear. You know, that saying we heard in the schoolyard, sticks and stones break bones, but you can mend them. Words can hurt forever. So we really have to think about our language and the energy we are creating with our words. Okay. Sorry. I just want to.
No, that was wonderful. We don't always realize how important our words are, especially, I think, so my grandmother had a stroke, and so pre-stroke, I did not think about how my words could affect anyone really. And then when I realized that there was this communication barrier between me and my grandmother, that's when I really started to see the importance of words. So it's a really great message, I think. So I want to quickly ask some questions about writing, because I know a lot of people in our audience have submitted questions about what the publishing process was like. Could you maybe talk a little bit about, one, if your writing was impaired and how you kind of got through that, and then two, what the publishing process was like?
Okay, so part one, everybody has a book in them. You know, that's just a fact, because we all have unique lives or unique perspectives. So that right there, I think, just, you know, I never had a fire in my belly to write a book ever. I just wanted a book dedicated to me so I'd have my name in print and not have to do any work. So just, but and then when I was, you know, this befallen or whatever, when this happened to me, I just had this need that I had to help others, on both sides of the bed rails. So it starts with your vision, and I tell everyone, you know, stay true. I don't have it on me. Shoot. I might have it in the back of my in the back of my book. I have some pointers, like a letter, open letter. I'm just trying to, if you want to write, I have a magnet that talks about positive outlook equals positive output. Stay true to your vision. Well, that's how I was about my book. I wrote my book. I didn't start, I had plethora of notes, because at one point I had over 48 doctors because I was an enigma. They couldn't figure out why I had my stroke, which is the mystery in the book. And it was an outside source that we didn't learn about till 4 years later. But I had to have a lot of notes because, well, that's another whole story. But one of the things I recommend when someone's in a hospital long-term is to have a notebook next to the bed, and people can make notes of what's going on for that day, or even the person going through it. It's really important to journalize. And for me, I dictated my book into a recorder because I didn't have the ability to write. And I hired a service. My husband, thank God, he's so generous. We invested a lot of money to self-publish, but I self-published in 2005. It's so different now. So I did things like I made my self-published version a hard copy, and I did all these processes to it that I ended up spending way more than I ever needed to, because it's really not the way it looks. It's about what the message is, and whether you can create a market, if you can create a buzz to read it. And I luckily had a really good foundation of people wanting to read my story. But anyway, I dictated it. I hired a service to translate it into text. I forget what they call it. But anyway, and then I went about editing it. And then I had other editors that I had to hire. Usually it goes through a 2 or 3 editor process. But my book was only on the market for 3 months. And it went to the bestseller list during that time because I created this buzz. I was very, as feisty as I was in my recovery, I was in my book selling. I went to Borders, which is no longer, and I said, I'd like to do an event here. And they said, no. And I said, well, you know what? I'm sitting here and you can close the store. I'm not leaving the store until someone reads my book and then tells me no, because you can't just say no. Our policy is not to do self-publishers. And I was resolute on that. And so they became my big backers, and I was able to do a lot of events through them because they loved the book. And then I went to New York with the book selling book expo, and kept, just pushing myself. And that was it. Marketing is much harder than the book writing. I'm telling you that right now. And any book author that you talk to, that's probably what they're going to say is you may have stalling in your writing, but the marketing is brutal. So what I tell people though is to self-publish. And the reason I self-published, because I wanted to stay true to my vision, and I wanted to maintain control of my story. I knew if I spent all my time trying to find an agent or a publisher, they would change the story to their vision. And so I wanted someone who would not make broad stroke changes to my book. You want to get your story out there. And then the way you would market it is, don't think big, think like your churches and your libraries and the small groups, and let it grow from there.
So we really should be changing your title to motivational speaker, best-selling author, and feisty marketer.
I know, I was very feisty on that too. And it paid off, but it's, that was because that was the same way with my recovery. I was like, this is what I want to do. And the power within, that's the name of this segment, right?
So we are out of time, but what is one last message that you want everyone to know?
Oh my God, there's so many. To recap, I would say, be kind to yourself. Make sure that you speak kindly to yourself. And for those that have, be kind to your care provider, because usually it's someone you love very much, and you might forget that you love them very much because you're frustrated. So when you become frustrated, take a breather, and remember that kindness goes miles. So be kind to yourself and to your and whoever's helping you, because their only diagnosis is helplessness. They're trying to help you. So be kind resilient by staying positive and forgive yourself, because forgiving yourself starts with you, and forgive others for what their little foibles are, because humans are not perfect. We're imperfect. So
Thank you, Julia. Thank you for that wonderful, thoughtful message. We are at the end of our session. To our wonderful audience, if your question wasn't answered today, please visit us again. I want to thank Julia Fox Garrison for her time and dedication. I really appreciate that you shared so
hugs,
much with this community.
hugs everybody.
For more information on aphasia, to find the recording to today's webinars and past Ask the Expert, Ask the Author webinars, visit us at aphasia.org. Julia Fox Garrison, the book is Don't Leave Me This Way, or When I Get Back on My Feet, You'll Be Sorry. Thank you so much for being here. I hope to see you at the next one. Thank you.
Thank you.